again, brother, for
Yeah.
taking the opportunity to speak with me. It's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to have you on this platform for as long as I can remember. Since the first time you and I actually conversed. So with COVID-19 affecting our economy and the riots taking center place, you know, in the world, I just wanted to point out some of the problems that Black people are currently facing in other parts of the country. I'm not trying to devalue or take away the issues at hand in the States, but this isn't the first time that, you know, Black people have suffered, and I'm almost certain it's not going to be the last time. So with that, So with that being said, I kind of want to just address some of the stuff that's going on in the Bahamas. And then when I was doing this, I thought, who better to ask than you? You've been in the Bahamas the majority of your life. You've seen what's going on in the other states, namely, you know, the problems with Christopher Columbus. People are just now catching on with Christopher Columbus, you know, like knocking down the stands. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, they just started taking down or knocking down some of his statues, and it's in Massachusetts, and I believe it's in Virginia. But you have been trying to fight this crusade against Columbus, much like myself, since you've been working at where you've been working. Is that correct?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's definitely correct, you know, and just to put something in perspective, you know, we were all given this kind of feel-good, sugar-coated, whitewash version of the Columbus story.
Right.
So much so that when I was about 13 or 14 years old, I remember in history class, we actually did a mock trial of Christopher Columbus. And I chose to defend Christopher Columbus on the basis of, you know, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be Christian. If it wasn't for him, we would still be in Africa poor and living in the bush and all these things, you know. And so there's been a concerted effort. That's what people need to realize. Throughout history, there's been a concerted effort to establish white supremacy in all sorts of different modes and ways and in every aspect of our life. So much so that it's clear that the historical culture of most Western nations is seeped in racism. Racism is a part of American culture. Racism is a part of Bahamian culture, Jamaican culture, Haitian culture. Of course, it's global now. In the U.S., of course, you guys have like the biggest platform, you know. So I don't know if I may be wrong for saying this, but it's almost like a sense that the problems, the issues in the U.S., as you could see it now happening, they kind of spurn and bring to light other issues that have been going on. And so now this Columbus issue that we have here is now really beginning to gain traction because of this kind of global thing. And for me, it makes me very happy because it shows that we aren't as disjointed, that we aren't as separated as a lot of people like to lead us to believe. You know, and we often like to focus and we often like to blame ourselves for our own problems. You understand?
Right.
But yeah, you know, just introducing myself. I'm Christopher Davis, born and raised in the Bahamas. We in the Bahamas, we are very proud of our kind of our family heritage. So I got to shout out my island, Cat Island, right now.
Right.
It's descended from Old by Cat Island. Cat Island is the same island where Sidney Poitier was raised, the first black man on Broadway, Bert Williams. You understand? The Roker family and Lenny Kravitz and all those people who have Bahamian roots, who kind of made it big in American entertainment. A lot of them have roots in Kid Island. And Kid Island is also the more revolutionary, historical part of the Bahamas as well. The black part, you find a lot of black culture there as well. Now, to shift back to Columbus, you know, it isn't like I've been the sole guy fighting for it. This has been a sentiment that has been shared, just for example, by people, I don't call them names, but I can call some of the institutions, you know, the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas, you know, some people at Antiquities, Monuments, and Museums is where I work at my day job, but my fight is...
I want you to focus on that again, because I don't think most people have an idea of what you do and your credentials. Can you tell them what you do and how we ultimately met? You actually work at the National Slave Museum in the Bahamas, right? Like where slavery actually legitimately took place. There's a building in the Bahamas that they've kept up since this time to show where Bahamian people or African people were bought and sold. And so you pretty much as a curator tell people the history of what transpired in the Bahamas and why this particular building in that corresponding location is pivotal to our culture, correct?
Right. So my role is called the Pompey Roll Museum. It's named after a revolutionary leader of a slave revolt. His name was Pompey Roll, and Roll, R-O-L-L-E, Esther Roll, from Good Times and all of those old shows, the actress, she's actually descended from this Roll plantation, as well as I have two great grandmothers as well that are descended from that population as well, and it's named after him. My role there is actually I'm the historical interpreter, and I'm also a researcher. Right? And before we get into some of the racial issues that exist in the Bahamas, I would also like to commemorate some of the things that we do well. One of those is being the preservation of that building. It was the major marketplace and the place where slaves were bought and sold. More importantly, though, it has great significance to Black Americans because there's a concept that was centered in the Bahamas. We all know what the Underground Railroad was. Well, in the Bahamas, we had this concept called the Saltwater Underground Railroad, the most successful slave revolt in United States history. And it happened on a ship called the Creole ship that left them from Hampton, Virginia. And the reason why we call it the most successful slave revolt is because it ended with the freedom of about 145 African American slaves, okay? And only 2 had died. And then they pretty much gained their freedom. And then they were settled, most were settled in Jamaica, and some of them actually had the gall to stay right there in the Bahamas. A lot of them who stayed in the Bahamas settled in Gambia Village. A man named Elijah Morris, who was the rowdiest guy in this revolt, he settled there in Gambia Village, and all of the Morrises that come out of Gambia Village are descended from the rowdiest guy in the most successful slave revolt in United States history. Now, the building where I work is actually on the site where that revolt ended. You understand? So while it was also a building where slaves were sold, after a certain point in history, particularly when the British abolished the slave trade, things began to shift. And we always had like this seafaring culture. We had this kind of quasi-industry called wrecking, which is essentially the salvaging of ships. And all of this kind of intertwined and created this notion of the Saltwater Underground Railroad. Now, we, of course, concentrate on other relics like the Columbus statue. And it's almost like this ironic thing where it's almost kind of funny, but it's not. But it's almost like somebody literally picked the worst examples to commemorate as the major statues in our country. So the 3 major, Columbus is the major one. He is in the front of a house called Government House, which is the seat of the Governor General, who is pretty much the long arm of the Queen. Okay, so even our police force, all our politicians, they have to swear allegiance to the Governor General, who is actually the Queen. Okay? The voice or the arm of the law, you understand? So if they don't like the people we vote in, they have the power to make that election null and void and do whatever they want to, essentially. You understand? And then our police force is the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and all of them too got to pledge their allegiance, not to the people of the Bahamas, but to the Queen. You understand?
Who originally instituted slavery.
Right. Well, a family in that lineage, right? Now, Columbus, of course, we can get into him in more depth. The other statue, though, is Queen Victoria. Now, Queen Victoria is in my opinion, she is the most undeserving sort of historical character that's viewed in this benevolent light, right? So usually when you have a Queen Victoria, they talk about, her husband died at a very young age and she wore black to commemorate her husband. When you dive into it, you can see that she had many affairs throughout her life. So obviously she was so hell-bent on this man. But aside from her personal things, I don't want to get into that. This woman, I don't think anybody in human history has benefited more from the death and destruction on the continent of Africa and from colonization. And she physically met with African leaders like Chetshwayo from the Zulu clan, just to name one. And she pretty much decimated them. She did something called the Punitive Expedition, and she is the one that oversaw the scramble for Africa. She oversaw Cecil John Rhodes, who killed over 100 million Africans trying to march the Cape in South Africa with Cairo and Egypt. And she was the major beneficiary of all of this. She was the one that oversaw Leopold getting the Congo. She was the strongest person that was at the Berlin conference and the Brussels conference.
So she ultimately petitioned and kept him in power so that he could do what he can do.
Yeah, well, Henry Morgan Stanley, he was the one that was sent there to map out the Congo region on behalf of all these European powers. See, these European people have to understand, and it hasn't changed today, it has always been a concerted effort by these European powers to degrade African people. And we don't actually acknowledge certain parts of the history because it's not highlighted, of course, and we just don't know about it. And if we knew about these things, on a global scale, every person of African descent, we would walk into any political arena with our chin up. If you catch my drift, we understand.
I'm having right now too that most people are not aware of. I can't thank you enough for pointing that out. It's that most people are not aware. They think that this racism and slavery and all of these issues that took place with Columbus are dead, but that's not true. The issues that the things that they have done and the issues that they have put in place are now continuously causing Bahamian people problems centuries later into the future by the racist policies, the slavery, and the things that they've done in the past are now ultimately shaping the future in the Bahamas now.
Right. So let me make some parallels about the ways that racism manifests in the United States and in the Bahamas. See, in the United States, you have subtle racism and overt racism. A lot of people think, especially even black people, think that racism is that guy wearing the KKK hood. You understand? The white person that would literally come out and call you the N-word. People see racism as that. Some people don't see a white person coming asking to touch your hair because they think it's exotic. It's also being racist. You understand? And then you have many different subtle differences. Now, my argument is viewed as quite controversial here in the Bahamas because, of course, everyone knows that America is pretty much the poster child, especially today, of racism. However, there are certain ways that racism manifests in different areas given their history. And in the Bahamas, in some ways, the Bahamas is actually more racist.
Is it?
Yeah, than America is. You understand? One of the ways that it has to do a lot with population proportions as well. But however, in America, even in a place like Brazil, you go to the favela in Brazil, or you go to the quote-unquote ghetto in America, you will see a diverse group of people living in poor, gentrified areas. You understand what I'm saying? In the Bahamas, you will not see that. You do not see white people and black people as you see in a Brazilian favela, as you see in, say, certain places in the United States, because you have the ghetto and you also have the trailer park, stereotypically speaking. You understand? And our quote-unquote poor whites, relative to the other whites, they live in middle-class communities. And when you look at the ultra-rich areas, because we have a lot of wealthy blacks, again, because of our proportion and because of our freedom fighters that, of course, came before us and made certain sacrifices, made certain political maneuvers in order for this to happen as well. I'm not negating that. However, when you look at an area, for example, like Life Key, and then you look at another area like, say, West Ridge Estates, an area where black people live, even though they're both wealthy areas, the properties in Life Key, some of them exceed $20 million. This is where celebrities from Hollywood and stuff like that live. Now, Life Key, where did it get its name? It got its name from a man named John Lightfoot. That was supposed to be, he is, the slave master. Now, in the Bahamas, another thing that we were able to attain, a positive stride, if you will, is we have this thing called generation property. So there's like this kind of unspoken, known rule that if your ancestors were enslaved somewhere, you understand, essentially, you have rights to that land. You understand? That's your land, and all those who could trace their roots back to specific plantations. But when you look at all of the prime areas in the Bahamas, you go to what we call the family islands, the outer islands, my island where only 1,200 people live, and you go and you drive around, you see two things that exudes blatant racism, and it's rooted in blatant racism. One thing that you would see a lot of these major real estate companies, most of which are white-owned. You understand? I don't even know if I can call their names to get, because, they can get vicious when they're ready, but they know exactly which companies they're talking about, and they know exactly who own them. The people who own them, many of these people could trace their roots. Some of them you could trace their wealth back to slavery. Some of them you could trace them back to our equivalent of the Reconstruction era, our equivalent of the Jim Crow era, which is where we had something called the truck and credit system that operated very similarly, with some differences to the American sharecropper system. You understand what I'm saying? So all of these families still to this day control the Bahamas, and they own all of these prime properties in the family islands that used to be plantations. So during this period of history that Bahamians love to consider, we weren't as bad as the United States. We didn't have apartheid, we like to feel like we better than people. You understand? In some circles, you know, what we hate racism is people. It's like an innate need to downplay racism, to downplay white supremacy in the Bahamas. But we all know that this land was stolen.
Right.
One of the most prominent stories is about the Valiant Three in Kid Island. The last of the Valiant Three just passed away. May she rest in peace. Her name was Adeline Bristow. You understand? And the white elites at the time, known as the United Bahamian Party, many of their children still in politics to this day. Their children, their grandchildren.
People who would put the Bahamians in slavery are still in power till this very day?
Yeah.
Wow.
And people who continue with the Reconstruction period, they control the ports and all the shipping. Many people see wealthy black people, but they don't actually understand the level of disparity. You understand?
Right.
There's one politician in particular who is directly descended. You could trace this man's line all the way back. You understand? Through every ugly period of racism in Bahamian history. And he is still voted into parliament every election. How does that happen? Now, people would say, oh, well, these black people, it doesn't happen like that. He runs in an area, I think the area is Montague and St. Anne. Sometimes they change up the boundaries, but he runs in an area off this road called Eastern Road, an area that used to be known as the New Nile, where black people used to live, free blacks used to live. It used to be one of the oldest African settlements in the Western Hemisphere in its zenith. You understand? And they used to call a little creek around there the New Nile. Now, all of these people, all of the old oligarchy, as we like to call them, you know, a nice way of saying these old, rich, racist white people, historically racist white people, you understand? All of them own these properties now. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So how is it, you see what I'm saying? So how is it that this gentrification exists? And when you look at where the vast majority of black Bahamians live, you understand? Like I said, it's still this great separation. When you look at where we shop. Now, the truck and credit system was another boost after slavery for white wealth. You understand what I'm saying? And it's just extremely frustrating to see some of these things and they aren't acknowledged. This area that I'm talking about right now is a thorn in the side of the Bahamas. I don't care what nobody says. And they are very, very racist in my opinion. You understand? Reason being, never in their history have they ever voted for a black politician. Not one time.
Never.
You could put a glass of milk and you could put Barack Obama and they could vote for that glass of milk because that glass of milk white. That's how they say.
Wow.
And this is where that same politician who is the son of Roland Simonet, who is also somehow made it on our $50 bill. Roland Simonet was just ratified, if you will, as a national hero recently in the last 2 years or so. And this is the guy that oversaw the mass disenfranchisement, what I like to call Bahamian apartheid. You didn't have a Soweto, you wouldn't have had a Soweto massacre in the Bahamas. However, you would have had many of the same stringent parallels, particularly also being a British colony. The major difference between South Africa and the Bahamas is the minerals and the wealth that was drawn from it. South Africa is viewed as a cash cow, and it still is a cash cow for Western countries to this day. You understand? Whereas the Bahamas is just viewed a nice vacation spot. You understand? And we should be a nice vacation spot. There's another man named Stafford Sans. He's on our $10 bill, right? He's also viewed as this kind of national hero guy.
This brings me to my next point. This is something I wanted to elaborate on as well too, and I just find it to be flat out despicable. See, going to the Bahamas for me was a double-edged sword. It was one of the most exotic and beautiful places I've ever been to in my entire life. You know, I got to meet you. I met a lot of beautiful locals and people that genuinely seem to, care about what they do, and they wanted something better. But at the same time, there were things that really got under my skin, hence why you and I are having this conversation today. It would appear, and you can stop me if I'm wrong, that the biggest places that people seem to work are the hotels. And there are 2 hotels, according to what I saw, on, in Nassau, Bahamas. And that was I think it was the Bahamas More, and then the other was the Atlantis. Now, if you have black folks, because everywhere I went, it was black people in there. I didn't see any white people in there, for lack of a better word. Maybe they were there. I don't know. But everywhere I went and walked around, it was black people in servitude roles, serving drinks, serving towels, doing
Opening.
being janitors, opening doors, right? And we were out there tipping and doing stuff. And the guy said, "Thank you so much for this tip. This is the most I made all day." And I said, "Well, people aren't tipping here. They don't tip." And then that's when the guy told me. I was shocked, Chris. You're not going to believe it. The guy told me that most people in the Bahamas make anywhere from $2 to $5 an hour, right? And when I heard this, I was appalled because, based off of, now this is where, where I'm going with this one.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going, brother.
I learned that according to what I learned was the Bahamas was ranked, if memory serves me correctly, number 3, on the GDP capita list.
That's very deceiving, though.
That's my point.
That you see
United States is like number
deceiving.
1. Bahamas is ranked number like 2 or 3. So if Bahamas is completely rich and apparently one of the richest places to visit in the world, how come the inhabitants and the people who are living there are only making $2 an hour and they're in servitude positions? What's even more despicable is the individuals who are working there can't leave the States to better their lives. So they're stuck in perpetual slavery or servitude, for lack of a better word, serving individuals who come there and exploit these people. And then from there, what makes it even worse is the individual, and I didn't mean to ask, but I had to know, he told me the rent, the cost of living, and this lends credence to what you said too, the cost of living is like $1,600 to $1,700. So how is a person paying rent on $2 or $3 an hour when the rent is $1,600? And where's all this wealth coming from or going, Chris?
That GDP figure is quite misleading. Now, the Bahamas is what you call a tax haven. You understand? So you have a lot of these rich billionaires who don't want people to know about their money, and they keep their money here. So that's a big factor too. Now, our cost of living, we are actually ranked, I believe, about between 6 and 9. We fluctuate in terms of cost of living globally. Now, our GDP, while we 3rd in the world, you understand, or in the Western Hemisphere, as they say, that's actually not true for several reasons. Number one, all of our food is imported. So that's number one. You understand? It's because of this kind of touristic model that we have adopted and our proximity to the United States. These are the things that do us. And those figures are very bad. Bermuda actually has a higher GDP than us. And I believe the Cayman Islands actually do as well. So those figures, but Bermuda is still a British colony. So that's why sometimes probably, you understand, they try to say they don't include Bermuda as a country in its own. I guess they include them as a part of Great Britain. You understand? Now, the minimum wage here is $5.25 an hour. That's what it is. $42 a day, $210 a week. Right now, gas is about $4.25 a gallon. Gas is usually around between $4.90 to $5.50 a gallon. A gallon of milk is about $8, $7, $8, $9. You understand? The cost of living here is extremely high. Light bills in the summer, you could live in the smallest 1-bedroom apartment and you're paying over $100 a month for your light bill because we import the gas and we burn the coal. So this GDP figure that they talk about is quite, and like you say, now to go with the whole the servitude thing, there's a term that in tourism they call service and servitude that I learned from one of my professors, actually. I ain't calling her name, right? But I learned a lot from her, and she brought a lot of things in perspective about tourism, you understand? And one of the things is that we've kind of made a mistake in, and one of the rules, number one, in tourism, which the Bahamas is one of the leaders in, as you know, and people come from all around the world to attend our universities to learn our tourism model, right? One of the major things is you never cater your culture to feel like the guests can feel better or to them. You dictate your culture, your history, and all of these things. We've made an error in that is why Columbus statue remains and all these things. So there is that sense. Now, the hotels, the first big one, Atlantis, that was, I don't know if he still owns it, I believe he does. And I know it's at least partially owned by a group that's based in Canada, but it was actually built right before apartheid ended. Right, began before apartheid ended by a white South African Jew. His name was Saul Kersner. Okay, he owns that, and then Bahamas is Chinese. Now, the difference between the two is Atlantis was actually built by a lot of Bahamian. Like, we could claim that we built Atlantis. You understand? In a sense, we claim that we built Bahamas More too, even though there was an overload of Chinese workers as well. Now, however, we never have serious positions in these hotels. Like you say, we had the bellman, the maids, the towel hops, and all of these things. All of this has to do with that man I mentioned briefly earlier. His name is Stafford Sans. They call him the father of tourism. I pointed him out when he was in the museum. Now, this guy was a blatantly racist, uber rich, Nazi sympathizing racist. Can't describe it no other way. He has a Wikipedia page. You could Google, you could look him up. And on his Wikipedia page, he has a picture with a man named Hjalmar Schacht, who was the Nazi Party's Minister of Economics up until about 1935 or so. You understand? Like, he wrote books about keeping countries subservient to their colonial masters. All of a sudden now, they thank Stafford Sans. They're like, oh, well, we would have never had tourism if it wasn't for this right racist, pastry, I could call him Stafford Sans. You understand?
Wow.
Now, this guy's on a $10 bill. Some people even go as far as to call him the father of the Bahamian industry. And ratified as a
So they worship
hero.
A guy who is a Nazi, a known Nazi, and ultimately wanted to keep black people. Well, he was affiliated with Nazism.
Yeah,
so
right.
whether you are or you weren't, you're still affiliated with it. So guilty by association.
His major mentor was the Nazi Party's former Minister of Economics. So even if he wasn't with Hitler's murderous policies, he definitely was a eugenicist.
Exactly.
And all of these things,
and then,
right?
too, you're telling me he ultimately also, pardon my interjection, that he ultimately also wanted to keep this ideology of keeping individuals in a servitude mentality so that way people can continue to
100%.
perpetuate this servitude bullshit years later.
Oh, yeah. So if I was to single-handedly pick one man in the 20th century to blame, because it's not one man to blame, it's a group, and then, of course, the system of colonization in itself, it would be Stafford Sans. You understand? And he was the one that set up the tourism industry so that Bahamians would be disenfranchised. White Bahamians don't even own major hotels in the Bahamas, so that should tell you something. You understand? Mm-hmm. He also had a friend named Wallace Groves, and our second city is called Freeport. The reason they call it Freeport is supposed to be this big trading center, and in many ways it still is. You understand? But again, people only could go there, drive a couple forklifts, drive the crane, and you make some better dollars than the man on the side of you. But at the end of the day, right now, Freeport has been in dire economic strength, and then they had to deal with Hurricane Dorian, and they still in dire economic strengths. You understand? And that is because how Stafford Sans pretty much sold that to his buddy Wallace Groves and put all that money in his pocket. I could go on and on about this man, but to make my point clear with him, it's again the kind of semi-joke that I told earlier. Is like we pick the worst of the worst and make them into national heroes. You understand? And it's because we have too many white apologists, too many British apologists in the Bahamas in positions of power as well. You understand? And so this is just a simple question I can ask, and I hope Bahamians could answer this for me, because they love to do these mental gymnastics and give, oh, well, he did this, he did that, if it wasn't for him, this. First of all, the man never served a cup of coffee to no one in his life. What we should thank and what we should praise and for our tourism product is us. People like me who work in the museum, right. The maids and all these people, because y'all have the southern hospitality where we get we further south. And we get that real southern hospitality, So that's kind of the benevolent side of it. You understand? And our God-given beauty of this country has nothing to do with Stafford Sans. Follow me? Now, what do you think Stafford Sans did in 1967 when we won Black Rule, as they like to call? They got to take the black out now. They call it majority rule. The flag, when they wrote it down, it said black represents the people. Now they say no, black doesn't represent the people. It represents, you got to include the what they call the conky Jodam too. Right? So now Stafford Sans in 1967, after we won majority rule, the man defected from the Bahamas. How can you make a national hero of somebody that defected from a country? Explain that to me.
He turncoated.
Yeah, he defected and moved to England. He didn't want to be in a country run by black people. He thought that this was the end of the Bahamas. We still here. We grew your so-called tourism ministry, and there are black leaders, right. Some of whom are actually, I ain't gonna be popular for saying this, but you have certain black leaders Clement Maynard. You understand? Even Perry Glass and Christie, who have made, in my opinion, bigger contributions to tourism. You understand? People like Ed Moxie, you understand? Our entertainers. And then you have people talking about tourists coming to the Bahamas since the mid 1800s when Conrad brought in the first steamships and stuff like that. So they give too much credit to this man, Stafford Sans. His picture, if you remember, was actually in the museum as the father of tourism. You understand? I glad it there so I can tell people about the real story. Because there's no way that man should be any national hero, particularly even if you want to overlook all the things he did. When we were becoming the Bahamas, you understand, he defected. The man fought against the women's right to vote. The man fought against black majority rule, and the man fought against independence. And what is so disturbing is people like Stafford Sans and some of these other families, if you were to trace their lineage, you would trace them back and you would see that they also own plantations. You understand? These men come from places known like Current. I ain't put too much highlight because I don't want people to think I trying to ostracize certain places, right? But this is the reality. Harbor Island, they used to brag in Harbor Island about if they kill a black person, if they see him with a book in his hand. You understand? They're saying the same thing that you see in the American South. And remember now, the vast majority of Bahamians, we are actually descended from former 13 colonists who wanted to remain loyal to Britain after the American Revolution. And this is how the Saltwater Underground Railroad thing began, and all these people came over here. My last name is Davis. My former enslaver was a loyalist from South Carolina named Jacob Davis. You understand? Who moved here in the 1780s after they got kicked out of America because they wanted to remain British. You understand? And people, it's like, and we've been taught blatantly in our high schools that, well, slavery was easy in the Bahamas. And then we see the same thing manifesting here today. Oh, well, we're not that racist. And then what we do is we point, oh, look at George Floyd. Look at Breonna Taylor. All those things don't happen here. But they do. We had several young black unarmed men being killed by the police. You understand?
In the
then
Bahamas.
It's just like...
In the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas, oh yeah. One being D from Mason's Edition. My brethren, who I knew personally, BJ, right there, I guess that would be off Market Street area. You all know what I'm talking about, off Wolf Road. Remember, I already explained to you who our police are actually loyal to, who they swear an allegiance to. And the police pretty much operate like they do in the United States as a military arm for the status quo. So when they patrol in, quote-unquote, nice neighborhoods, they patrol in those neighborhoods to protect the property of the people that live there. When they patrol in the lower class neighborhoods, they patrol in the neighborhoods to arrest the people that live there.
And they're going to turn up the force on those people over there, but they don't dare do that over there to the European individuals who live in those areas because they're loyal to them, and those people are bought out. Those police are bought out by them.
Exactly. So, and white privilege is something that's extreme in the Bahamas as well. You understand? So much so that skin bleaching is very prevalent.
Wow.
And this goes back to, oh yeah, very, very prevalent. Skin bleaching, it's not like in Jamaica where you would see it among both men and women, but in the Bahamas, a lot of women bleach their skin. But that is one of the telltale signs of the ugly manifestations of white supremacy and racism and even colorism, probably even more so, you understand? So during those same periods where I was talking about with our kind of white oligarchy, when they had complete control, how to segregate it, there were many things that were ingrained into our psyche. One of those slogans was white is right, black stay back, but brown you could stick around. You understand? And that is a very, very, it might sound simple, but it's actually very complex in the Bahamas, because in the Bahamas, and this is another proof of this manifestation of racism, we don't have the same racial gradation scale. Only now it's starting to kind of mesh into one. But before a long time, we did not have that same racial gradation scale as Americans did. Quote unquote, the one drop rule.
For people at home who might not be aware, can you give us a brief synopsis as to what that rule was?
So in America, they have the one drop rule. It's pretty simple, and it's pretty much the rule that has taken over the global psyche. If you have one drop of black blood, i.e., if you are of obvious African descent, you black. You understand? And then the whiteness came with the ability to prove that you don't have any black ancestors. You understand? Only later on they started to claim the indigenous American ancestry so that they could have some false claim to rights to be there in America. But that's a whole other issue. You understand? Now in the Bahamas, let me use a celebrity just so I could break it. I don't know if you know Quincy Jones, right?
Of course.
And he has a daughter, Rashida Jones, right? Now Rashida Jones is one of those people who is a member of the black community, but she is very, very, very light skinned, you know? And if you see her, you know, she's one of those people, not to seem superficial, but realistically speaking, like if she was to tell you she was like Czech or something like you would kind of believe her. So she is black. She doesn't have the phenotypical black look. Now, someone like Rashida Jones living in the Bahamas would be white. Someone like Alicia Keys living in the Bahamas, if they wanted to, could be considered white. You understand? And that is why I make another statement that there are no poor white communities in the Bahamas, because that's the difference in that racial gradation scale. These communities particularly in certain family islands that they refer to as poor white communities, when you actually go there, some of them look like you, brother. they just lighter skin,
and I would get special privileges or be looked upon as higher status because of my fair complexion in the Bahamas.
Exactly. Now, that was something that came post-slavery, because in the Bahamas, like on the plantation, for example, you would not be automatically picked because you were lighter skinned to be the overseer or to be in the house or something like that, unless you were the child. And this is something that's quite common, unless you were the child of the cousin of the slave or something like that. And you understand? But generally speaking, you would have seen all shades of people working the field, and sometimes you would have seen the blackest person on the plantation as the driver, because he was the most loyal one to the master. Now, later on, through these colorisms and through people identifying and defining whiteness in the Bahamas, that's when all of these things began to happen. And like I said, that skin bleaching, you know, that is a real telltale sign. You have serious colorism in the United States as well, but I don't know if a lot of people understand what I'm talking about. We're talking about extreme versions of skin bleaching where people endanger their health.
Which
just
people who ultimately look relatively similar to like how Sammy Sosa has bleached himself now would be a perfect example.
Oh yeah, I could show you a handful of people who was darker than me in high school, and now they pink. You understand?
Wow, that's so sad. It's sad.
Yeah, man.
Chris, I have a question for you too. Can you walk us through, and this will be pretty much my final question for you as well too. You've done a fantastic job, brother. Would you be able to give people historical context? It's a two-part question, really. Would you be able to give us a historical context of Christopher Columbus, how he came to the Bahamas, how he, raped, pillaged, and stole, and why they put his statue there in, downtown Bahamas as an idol? Because I saw it with my own eyes when you had pointed it up.
Yeah,
and I couldn't believe it. I literally had to walk down the street to see this, because they put him in the center and they have him in front of a big house like this guy is God, when this guy is arguably one of the most psychotic, atrocious individuals of all time. So could you walk us through again, just to reiterate, walk us again through how Christopher Columbus came there, what's his role in Bahamas, what he did there, as true as possible, and then tell us why ultimately people worship this gentleman or this person that they call a gentleman.
Now, the Bahamas, a lot of people don't know that the Bahamas was actually the place where Christopher Columbus first landed. We actually have an argument that's still going on to this day, where people argue if it's Cat Island, the island where my island is from, or the island that is now called San Salvador, and they literally argue because they want to be the one where Columbus landed first, kind of overlooking what I call the Lucayan genocide. Right. So the people that lived here, the first people to encounter Christopher Columbus, they were known as the Lucayan people. They are usually erroneously referred to as Arawak.
Or the Taino.
Or the Taino, I was just going to say that one, right. Now, the Taino, they were ethnically related to the Taino, but they were culturally separated in many ways. So they were not Taino per se. They were their own version, but of course, through bloodline and all that, they were linked to the Taino. But the people that inhabited the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos that was known as the Lucayan Peninsula. Right? Now, these people had their own religion. They were very peaceful people. They traded with people. They went to different islands like Cuba and traded. You know, they have a beautiful creation story where their supreme god is Adabira, and she came out of the cave pregnant, and she gave birth to Yukahu. And so I just want to give a little context
Please
to people.
I want people to
right?
know this.
Because they are never spoken about. And in the Bahamas, we do not have any major commemoration to these people at all.
Till this day, just a race like they're nothing. And these people were one of the most holy people out there.
Right. All right, the quote Deontay Wilder to this day. But the most prominent statue is Christopher Columbus. Now, Christopher Columbus was commissioned. This was after, important to note too, this was after Moorish rule in Spain. Directly after that, when Spain was unifying, Queen Isabella and Queen Ferdinand, they were the one that sanctioned Christopher Columbus at the behest of the Catholic Church. Now, Christopher Columbus was, in my opinion, just a completely insane, dogmatic Christian maniac who just happened to get lucky, right? So he was commissioned to go to the West. A lot of people like to create this myth that no one knew the world was round and all that stuff. That's garbage. You had many different groups, namely Abu Bakari from the Kingdom of Mali. Even Columbus wasn't even the first European to make it to the Western Hemisphere. You had Ivan the Red there in Newfoundland in Canada. You understand? So that kills that. Now, this is an important question as well, and this is why historical interpretation is so important. Because, of course, people attach the word discovery, and then they remove the word discovery. But I think they should keep the word discovery. You want me to tell you why?
Wow.
If me and you on a boat, we have a crew, and we thirsty, the crew is about to have a mutiny because we have failed them, we can't feed them, we don't know we led them, and they think they're about to die. Then all of a sudden we stumble across some islands, and the people on those islands rescue us. Who discovered who? So the Lucayans discovered the lost Spaniards in their boat. Now, one of the first things he did, of course, was ask for gold. So these people just rescued you, right? And then you asked him for gold. Within the week, he was out there slaughtering people. He learned that there was no gold. He became enraged. And when you read his diary, this man literally believed that he was ordained by God and sanctioned by the Pope, the Catholic Church. There were several papal bulls that also are significant to black people that we don't acknowledge. One being Dom de Versus and Romanus Pontius.
And for the people at home who might not be aware, what's a papal bull?
A papal bull is a decree or law passed down by the Catholic Church. And these papal bulls are at the root of the justification for what became the transatlantic slave
just
trade.
As you had said, these churches are just as much to blame with the slavery and the murder as anybody else.
The only churches I give passes to are the African-based churches that kind of evolved separate from that European colonial mindset, even though they have been infiltrated now too. And then the ones, like I mentioned before, the Black Separatist Baptist Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, things that came from out of our communities. Because I don't have a problem with, we look at religion in the wrong ways. You know, we have to put our Africanness, our blackness, before everything else. So you could be Muslim, Christian, atheist, Troy, Ifa, you could do whatever you're doing. You understand? But we need to be on the same political and social grounding. You understand? So this was a global decree that was in June of 1452, right? June 1452. It was Pope Martin V or Nicholas II, one of those popes. But they were around the same time, and they were all doing these papal bulls. But in Dom the Verses, it pretty much says that I give all you good Catholic nations permission to go out and enslave all infidels, pagans, Sacrians, and all of these things. So pretty much anybody that's not Catholic. And then it all came in. And then, of course, they used the curse of Ham. You understand? All of these were things that Columbus and these guys had in their psyche, that they are the ones that go on to spread Christianity. And anything that's not Christianity is of the devil. Now, you want to hear something crazy? To this day, West African religion is illegal in the Bahamas. Really? To this day. Really? Yeah. West African religion is illegal in the Bahamas. You have many countries in the region that's now eased up on it. Jamaica, but it's a term here that we call, that the British use. That was an African word that they pretty much polluted. You understand? And it's similar to the word voodoo, but here it's like opium. And so all of these things, so anything that was African, that the colonizer didn't like, they identified as obeah. Even our festival, Junkanoo, the people, people marching from Fox Hill in the 1950s, live in memory. The man named Mr. Ramsey, I can call his first name. He is my source for this, and he was living. And when he was a teenager in his early 20s, they were what we call Russian, which is participating in our Junkanoo parade and dancing. A parade that is of Akan origin, but heavy Yoruba influence in evolution, right? I ain't going to dwell too much, but when they used to rush, which is a big part, this is the festival we have every Christmas and New Year's, the people in Blairwood Estates used to call the police on them.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, these are things, and so it's like, it's so much racism, but I can't find no racists in the Bahamas. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like this weird thing. And it's because, like I said, first of all, you have many apologists, and you have people who are apologists and don't even know it. Some of them know exactly what they're doing. Some of them really don't realize, and then some of them don't know. So it's not about chastising anybody, But like I said, and the blame always is shifted to the black, right? And we can't even seem to blame Christopher Columbus for wiping out our indigenous population. We are making a hero of a man that wiped out our indigenous population. There's no such thing as a Lucayan anymore because he completely wiped them out. Right. Now, let me give you some other side of his arrival here. Right. So, the Lucayans were wiped out by being sent further south, as far south as Venezuela. From the Bahamas, as far south as off the coast as Venezuela, doing things like diving pearls and mining silver. You understand? Now, the Lucayans were known as some of the greatest divers in the world. They were actually akin to those people that you see in Indonesia who actually survived. But, they're known for being able to hold their breath for 10 minutes and do all this crazy stuff underwater. The Lucayans had a similar reputation to that. And they pretty much worked them to death, made them dive pearls until they drowned, and just in a system like that. Columbus set up haciendas. A lot of people in the Bahamas try to separate him from African oppression and be like, oh, well, he only did that to Lucayan. No, he set up haciendas. He had African slaves accompanying him on these journeys. You understand what I'm saying? He made 4 trips. He only came to the Bahamas on the first trip, and he stopped the 5 islands. Now, one thing I'd love to mention, the Bahamas is also the place where we have the first significant revolutionary action against this European global rule. You understand? So when Columbus was leaving the Bahamas, he kidnapped 7 Lucayans. Right? It may seem simple and trivial, but that's how history works. Often when people making history, they don't know they're making history. You understand what I'm saying? And this is a good case here. And this is something that's been overlooked in our history. And when we replace the Columbus statue, I want to suggest that we either put Rodrigo de Triano or put these 2 Lucayans. So of the 7, 2 of them caught wind, and they had a little tussle, and they actually escaped from the clutches of slavery from Columbus. You understand? And they escaped on an island called Rum Cay, a little small island right here in the eastern Bahamas. That's very unheard of. It's very, for any divers watching, if you like diving, go to Rum Cay. And that is also the island where we had the first revolutionary action or action of resistance, however you want to refer to it, against Columbus's encroachment into the Western Hemisphere. They caught wind. They said, hey, I don't trust this man, and they ran away. Now, Columbus, upon returning, he did a lot of these things. And then you have, like, the Treaty of Tordesillas, where they created the line, and Portugal got this side, and that's how Portugal got Brazil, But Columbus essentially set in motion all of the mechanisms that was needed for global white supremacy that we still suffer from today. He set the framework for all of the conquistadors to follow. Your Hernan Cortez's, your Francisco Pizarro's. And it's partially because the Lucayans are no longer here. You see, in America, even though they are very much overlooked, you still have indigenous Americans in the United States. You still have, even in other parts of the Caribbean, you have a group called the Garifuna, which is like similar to the Seminoles in Florida, a mix of Kalinagos, not Caribs, Kalinagos and blacks who ran away and they kind of survived together. But in the Bahamas, there are no indigenous people besides the Seminoles that we rescued in the 1820s during the Saltwater Underground Railroad. So we got to do a Saltwater Underground Railroad one, bro. Trust me. But this statue was commissioned by a man named Washington Irving. This is the same man who wrote the book Sleepy Hollow, right? Now, Washington Irving also wrote a book and a play about Christopher Columbus. Now, this is in the early 1800s to the mid 1800s, long after Christopher Columbus has died. You understand? And this is when they start to really romanticize the great explorer who brought these savages and Christianized them. That's when they started to talk about all these, how the Lucayans and the Caribs were cannibals, and the Lucayans flattened their foreheads.
So this is where the story and the myth came from to try to romanticize this guy.
So if you had to give it to one person, it would be a man by the name of Washington Irving. Now, to propagandize his play and his book, he commissioned 53 statues of Christopher Columbus and sent them all around the world. One went to New York. Actually, I think one of those Columbus statues, I think the one in Virginia, check it out, who commissioned those statues. I would bet that Washington Irving commissioned one of those statues, because it was about him spreading this propaganda about Columbus so he could tell his heroic version of the story of Christopher Columbus.
And unfortunately,
Unfortunately, a lot of people took his words as historical fact. Man didn't do no research.
Nobody ever does, though, Chris. Nobody does do research. They don't want to dig in there. They're lazy.
Exactly.
They'd rather just eat the pie and sip the Kool-Aid.
Thank you very much. So, and he's, like I said, he's more famous for writing Sleepy Hollow and a few other plays like that. You understand? But he wrote a play about Christopher Columbus that portrayed him as this benevolent, civilizing hero that opened up the new world and this great discoverer. And that is what happened. He sent that statue of Christopher Columbus to the Bahamas. That statue was stuck on the dock for months. Even the most racist, slave-owning white Bahamians did not want Christopher Columbus' statue there. They had a newspaper called the Bahamas Argus, which was like the pro-slavery racist newspaper. That was the one that used to demonize not only black people, but people like James Carmichael Smith, who were abolitionists and stuff like that. You understand? And even they were there, and they wrote an article that was quite scathing. They was talking about how Christopher Columbus has returned to the Bahamas. And when I saw this article, it was in the May 1832 issue of the Bahamas Argus, May 7th. I'll never forget it. And I almost did a backflip when I saw this. And talking about how Washington Irving commissioned the statue and sent it down here to the Bahamas as a quote-unquote gift, but really was a piece of propaganda by a man who had grant funding to fund his stupid play that has now contributed to the brainwashing of literally millions and millions of people. You understand? And it's actually
also, Chris, gave the man a national holiday where millions of little kids get the day off from school to celebrate a man who was murdering and raping their ancestors.
Thank you. And it's he said another thing Christopher Columbus did that's overlooked, because people often be like, oh, but you can't just say he did. Yes, he did. He was a rapist and a pedophile. He set up, one of the first things he did was he set up brothels for prepubescent girls. You understand? Read Bartholomew de las Casas' account. He used to feed his dogs with the corpses of indigenous Americans.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Some of it is very hard to read. This statue was put there, and then they essentially, when the Bahamas Argus wrote this article, they was ridiculing them for bringing Columbus' statue, and they was trying to figure out a place to put it. And essentially, they said, well, if you want to put that statue somewhere, you got to put it in your own yard, right? Now, there's some truth to that garbage, to the whitewashed version of the story they gave us. The truth is that slaves and free blacks did erect that statue, but who else would have erected a statue during the days of slavery? Who did all the work? Who did all the manual labor? We erected everything around here. Right. And this attitude that we need to take. African Americans built Wall Street, just like enslaved black Bahamians built Bay Street. You understand what I'm saying? And we need to come to the political table with our chin up. These people that benefited from this, they actually need to be thankful that we are looking for equality, and more importantly, equity, because there's a difference between equity and equality.
Right.
We have to start to take what's ours, you understand? And we have to realize that none of this would be possible. The United States would not be a United States, Brazil, Bahamas, if it was not for the labor of our ancestors. You understand what I'm saying? And we have to stop this self-blame and all of these things that I'm going to take up too much more of your time, brother, but I'm sure we can elaborate it on.
Right.
But I take issue with terms like black on black crime. You understand? All of this is a continuation of the historical white man's rhetoric. And then that black on black crime can also be made a parallel to how they tell us, blacks participated in the transatlantic slave trade. But remember now, what is black? I just explained that earlier. Black is a social construct of anybody with one drop who is of obvious African descent. But in Africa, that term black don't hold the same credence as it does in the Western world. So if you go to Nigeria, for example, Nigeria has more people than Russia and has over 200 distinct languages and over 200 distinct ethnicities. So they are more diverse than, say, Europe. But when Germany invaded France, the same ethnic backgrounds, both of them speak a Latin-based language. No one say, well, look at this white-on-white crime. Look at these Europeans fighting amongst themselves, right? Exactly. But when the Yoruba go up against the Fulani because the Yoruba got a partner with the Portuguese, you understand?
Or during the Civil War or any of these things, they don't say white-on-white crime or any of that either, but they're quick to point it out when black people do it.
Thank you. You understand? I have a serious issue with that. When the two Italian mobs fight, they don't say, well, look at this Italian on Italian crime. You understand? So all that does is vindicate the colonizer, the slave master, the modern racist. That's all it is to serve to vindicate them. And that is why I'm so passionate about my black history. And I look to producing a lot of materials to give my perspective on these things. And my view, we should do away with no say black on black crime. We more diverse than them, all the way down to the molecular level, down to our genes. Me and you have a greater genetic separation than you would with a child because we are the first people and we are the most diverse people. They just put this superficial label on us as black. You understand? So that's another thing we have to stop doing. Blaming ourselves. Yes, we know that self-hate is a real thing within this, but we don't understand that we stuck in survival mode. You understand? If a man coming, but we ain't in the same room, but one man coming there with a gun right now, me and you are brothers. But if he say, hey, your family got to come with me, or your family got to, me and you ain't friends no more, brother.
Exactly. It's simple as that. Together, we're going to turn
we in survival mode now. And even if me and you both make it out of that, we would probably still have to understand and say, bro, he's just trying to survive. We would probably come to the understanding. But we let the white man's rhetoric enter our psyche. So everything is our fault. Everything. We enslave ourselves. You don't have one Wall Street in Goree Island, Senegal. You can't, the families that they claim to have made so much money from the slave trade, living in the same huts as everybody else. But you have people like the Rothchild family who has benefited from the slave trade, and where you can't even count the amount of money they have. They make Bill Gates look like he broke. Infinite. You understand?
Infinite.
And the Rothschilds even made money from Bahamian slavery. As I close, just one more nice fact, I guess, if you will, before I close. The Rothschilds even made money from the enslavement of my ancestors. So in American emancipation, in Bahamian emancipation, a lot of people don't know. Emancipation, of course, was the ending of chattel slavery for us. The slavery where you were completely dehumanized and you were the property of these people. That was the ending of chattel slavery. What people don't know is, in order for that to end, they didn't just free them. These slaves were bought from their owners by the government. And they were compensated for it because the cry was, well, people don't understand how important our ancestors were to the well-being of these countries today. And that's one of the roots of the problems as well. Right. You understand? So when Britain had to find the money in order to pay back all of their slave masters in Bahamas, in Jamaica, who do you think they went to for the loan? They went to the Rothschild family, got a loan for many billions of dollars, and that was the money that they used to pay back and compensate Bahamian slave masters, Jamaican, people from Barbados, Guyana, all of the slave masters in the quote-unquote British Empire received compensation for these slaves, which also increased the economic disenfranchisement of these people. And you know when they finished paying this loan back, brother? You know when Britain finished paying this loan back? In about 2016, 2017.
So they just finished paying it back right now?
They've been making money from slavery. Yeah, but slavery's over. It's over. it doesn't matter, right?
Wow.
So I hope that people could follow me and that my frustration don't boil over.
Of course not.
It's something I
the truth must
extremely
be
passionate
told.
about, brother. You understand?
That's the name of this.
And
Chris, that's the name of this channel right here, right now. And the name of my segment is called "A Pretty Lie Instead of an Ugly Truth," because people accept a pretty lie any day over an ugly truth.
And
so sometimes the truth hurts, and the truth must be told. So it is what it is.
Oh yeah,
Chris, thank you so much, man, for going out of your way, brother, to give us this amazing presentation. Amazing. I mean, I don't think, I didn't even have to ask too many of the questions because you had already hit everything I was going to ask you off the bat. So this was amazing.
Yeah, I looked over them and I was like, I already had it logged in,
It's amazing. Chris, right now, is there anybody that you ultimately want to shout out, or is there anything you want to say right now in regards to what's going on in the Bahamas now, what people can do to, make a social change?
And personally, the discussions that need to be starting to be talked about are now happening. There have been many, like I said, I'm not the only one. Right. To shout some people out who also do a lot of activism work, and I have to shout out Sister Erin Green. She has something called the Ministry of Decolonization. You understand? She's been a great supporter of mine. That is someone you could check out on Facebook. She is very, very knowledgeable about issues, particularly as it regards feminist issues and as they relate to colonization, as well, of course, as Black issues as well. And like I said, we aren't completely lost here. As I was alluding to earlier, we have Anku Sarah. He's what you call a Cahoon, which is a priest of the Coptic Church, wearing the Ankh.
Yes.
And he's actually based in Baintown, which is one of our African villages, which is peopled by many of the heroes of the Saltwater Underground Railroad as well. You understand? We have a school called Capron Academy, which is an African-based school based in Fox Hill, which is where most of the people from Congolese slave ships that were rescued were sent. You understand? So we have a lot of history here. We have a lot of links to that as well. But the discussions are now being, and like I say, we kind of feed off of what's happening in the States. The entire diaspora does, whether they want to admit it or not. There's a lot of, I don't like Black Americans and Africans don't like, all that is foolishness, you understand? So we are actually more unified than we often give ourselves credit for. Like I say, we have people, we don't know George Floyd, and we're down there crying for George Floyd, and we cry for Breonna Taylor, we cry for Tamir Rice. You understand? We cried for Mike Brown, and when we learned about it, we cried for Emmett Till way back then in Jess, Washington. And so these things feel us, but we just now starting to bring it closer to home, and that is the role that I play. I bring a lot of the historical racial issues kind of closer to home. A lot of people just see me as a rabble rouser, a race baiter, and all these things, but we know what it really is. Right. I have many white friends. I'll use the same argument they use against us. I have many white friends. You understand? I have a lot of white friends. They went to high school, a lot of white people, and all this stuff. So it ain't about that. You understand? We about truth and justice. America really needs to do a disheveling. They really need to dig up and go through their past and reconcile with things, and but I sure we have an opportunity to do that a lot more, brother.
Right, brother. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to do a round 2. We're going to be getting on that government and exposing those things there too, because this stuff needs to be said. We need to go down that route, and we need to share this information with our people so that way we can build a better future. Thanks again, Chris, for everything. I truly appreciate it, brother.